And folks, I don't know how to, well, I shouldn't say I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to summarize it any more than I already have. I summarized about the first half of it when you had the questions from the panelists over on BuzzPo, and you can go and look at that article. But the second half of the debate was Davis questioning Abbott and Abbott questioning Davis and going back and forth. And they had certain rules in there, so one asks one a question, rebuttals are, they have their rules. That's what I'm going to say. And Wendy Davis, seems like she forgot the rules she agreed to. Not only that, but she asked a question that maybe she should have done her research before she opened her mouth, because as Greg Abbott quickly pointed out when she tried to accuse him of something, that he was just following the laws that she, as a state senator, passed and advocated. Let's listen to the actual 2-minute clip from the debate. You make up your own minds here.
Davis, it's your turn to ask the question.
Mr. Abbott, Judge Dept has recently ruled against you and in favor of the school children of Texas, ruling that our schools are unconstitutionally underfunded. The only thing right now coming between our children and appropriate funding of their schools today is you. On behalf of the 5 million children of this state, will you agree tonight that you will drop your appeals and allow our schools to be appropriately funded?
Senator Davis, there's actually another thing coming between me and settling that lawsuit, and that is a law that you voted passed in 2011 that removes from the Attorney General the ability to settle lawsuits just like this. But it's important to understand that what I want to do is focus on creating, as governor, a better education system in this state. It's time that we put our partisan differences aside when it comes to building a better future for the next generation. What I'm focused on is not a school system that was constructed in part in the last century. What I'm focused on is building a better education system for the next generation. My goal as governor is to work toward elevating the Texas education system to be ranked #1 in the nation.
Mr. Abbott, attorney generals around this country have stood up against their legislatures when they believe that they are wrong.
To the rules
and what you are doing,
I appreciate you wanting to interject,
is wrong.
Senator Davis. We do appreciate it. We know it's a lively discussion. At the end, though, we have our closing statements, and I encourage you to use that time to continue the discussion. These are rules we all agreed upon together. Okay, Carlos, your question?
Senator Davis.
Yeah, you gotta love that one. Yeah. So she sits there and asks the question of Abbott, and then during his rebuttal time, he answers. And she didn't like his answer. She wanted to sit there and scream and stomp her feet and say, but, why didn't you just violate the law like other people do? So she flat out asked him why he doesn't break the law that she voted for. Like he's doing the wrong thing by following the laws. Well, that's one of the jobs of the Attorney General, is when the legislature passes a law and the governor signs it into law, the Attorney General's job is to make sure that law is followed. And if anybody tries to stop the law from being followed, it's his job to defend the law in court. And now there's a law that says, okay, there's a law passed, and somebody starts suing the state over the law, that the Attorney General has to follow those suits all the way through. They can't settle. They're not allowed to settle. They have to follow it through the entire court system until complete, including filing all the appeals. So it sounds like Davis has a disconnect in her own brain. Then again, we know Davis has a few disconnects in her own brain, because she lived for years and years as a single mom having to support herself without any help from the state or anything else, folks. It was a couple of weeks. And then she found sugar daddy Jeff Davis and married him and convinced him to pay off her student loans and to pay for her law school. And then when the day that he sent in the final check to finish paying off her law school, she turned around and filed for divorce. So, and that's the real story versus her official bio, which says that she was self-made. She paid for everything herself and spent years and years and years as a single mother. And then there's a story of her two so-called abortions. She had a tubal pregnancy that was not going to properly implant. So it really never was an implanted developing fetus in the first place, but she counted it as an abortion. And then there was another one that was a similar situation. And it wasn't done in an abortion clinic. These were both procedures that were life-saving, etc., 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 that were done in full surgical hospitals. Yet somehow she opposes the law that says, the new Texas law, that says that an abortion clinic needs to be a full-on ambulatory surgical clinic because an abortion is a form of surgery. You know, folks, you go and get your wisdom teeth pulled, there are certain laws in place that protect the patient by saying that the oral surgeons, they're not just regular dentists, folks, they are surgeons, have to have admitting privileges in case something goes wrong. They have to have certain items, life-saving mechanisms and items on hand in case something goes wrong. You're given anesthesia, so they have to be able to counteract that very quickly if you have a reaction to it, etc., etc., etc. For wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth being pulled is less invasive than shoving a surgically sterilized vacuum cleaner tube up inside of a woman's uterus and scraping away the uterine wall and killing the child that's developing in there. Because there's even more blood, more debris, more chance of infection, etc., from that suck and scrape. So I would think a highly invasive surgical procedure should have some form of protection in case something goes wrong. And that's what the Texas law says. Yet she opposes it. So who really hates women here, huh? The woman who says that all women should find a sugar daddy, and if you can't, make the government your sugar daddy and be dependent. And by the way, you need access to medical care that is substandard, and if something goes wrong, you're screwed. Or people who say, hey, we don't necessarily agree with people getting these type of procedures, but if they're going to get them, let's make sure they're safe. We think people should have opportunities to educate themselves and build their own skills so they can take care of themselves. You know, that's the difference between the sides of the aisle there. And that little section of debate very well shows that between the two. Now, looking back and forth, several people have talked about the who won the debate. And by and large, talking with most of the undecided independent fence sitters that I've talked to who care enough to even think about voting, that is, because there's people who don't care and they're not going to vote. But people who are looking forward to voting but they're truly undecided, that saw the debate, they think that Abbot won. Abbot had facts, and not only did he have facts, he had plans that were developed well enough to make things better. They weren't so fully developed that there's no flexibility, etc., etc., etc. They're common sense. This is what they want. There's, Abbott said this is what he's looking at doing. This is stuff that's contingent on when the legislature does. This is stuff that can be done legally within the executive branch. That's the way he addressed it. whereas all I heard out of Wendy Davis was a bunch of mudslinging with no factual backing on it. Of course, the left loves to see emotional hyperbole being thrown, and they love to claim that those are facts. Everybody knows, it's that whole everybody knows statement. Everybody knows Greg Abbott's in a wheelchair. He can't stand up for Texas. That's kind of like their statement's fact. He is usually restrained to a wheelchair, but not 100% of the time. But he does spend a lot of time in a wheelchair because he got severely injured. That's a fact. Does that mean that he can't, in quotes, stand up for Texas? He's already stood up for Texas, folks. He stood up to various special interest groups who have pushed to tell Texans that the laws that the majority of Texans wanted passed, that got passed, were somehow unfair or whatever. And he stood up and argued in front of the Supreme Court and other lesser federal courts, and has won. So far, he's done pretty good with the new Texas abortion laws. He did pretty good with the Texas voter ID laws, which of course make sure that voting is proper and safe, and so that elections aren't stolen by either side. Making sure that the people are voting exactly once, and doing so, and that they're supposed to be voting, and they're not voting for their dead uncle, or coming across the border from some other state or some other country and voting illegally in Texas elections. So how is he not able to stand up for Texas? Well, that's where you have your emotional hyperbole versus facts. And that's there was one writer, I think it was Politicus USA, and I have the link over on my BuzzPo article where I talk about his particular article. He was saying that Wendy Davis hit Abbott with facts, and Abbott had nothing to respond with. Not true. If you look at Wendy Davis, every single one of her responses was scripted and rehearsed, and it looked like she was reading them off a piece of paper, or she sounded that way. She sounded like it was rehearsed, like she was at a frickin' beauty pageant. She talked like she had a California Valley Girl accent instead of a Texas accent, which is not going to do her too much good. And she didn't speak very well to the people. She was very wooden or robotic, whereas Greg Abbott, very fluid, very articulate, very to the point. He answered the questions and then presented his plans. When he's asked, "What's your plan?" or "What are you going to do about something?" that's what he did. He gave his plan. When she was asked what she's going to do about something, she slung mud at Greg Abbott. Well, that's what she's going to do if she's a governor. She's going to sling mud at every non-oligarchist, left-wing person that's out there. Anyone who doesn't fall into her little collective or fall lockstep into what she says is this is how you're supposed to be within your little collective, she's going to sling mud at him. That's what she has shown she's going to do. So let's see what happens in the second debate, which is, I'm not sure on the date, but when I find out, I'll let you all know, and we'll see what happens with that second debate. This first one is, of course, an interesting one because it was all the way down in the Rio Grande River Valley. So, of course, a lot of questions that were hinged on ethnicity were asked, and that makes things really, really interesting because, of course, people who are actually ideologically right-wing and truly there look at people as individuals, not as collectives, not as ethnic groups. So they don't look at the Hispanics, the blacks, the purples, the oranges. They look at this person, that person, this person. They look at everybody as a whole, and what can we do for people as a whole, or what can we make available? Because it's up to the individuals to decide that they're going to take advantage of those opportunities when they're presented. So, it's somebody else's individual choice to take those opportunities and to do something with it and to work hard. Whereas the left side wants to put people in little collectives and give each little collective their own little special privileges and say, there you go, we did this for you, see? So you don't have to do for yourself, we did for you. And so, of course, anything that is ethnically motivated. Notice I'm not saying racial, because we're all one human race. So there were a lot of questions that were directed at attitudes towards Hispanics in particular. And you could almost see that a lot of them were targeting the illegal immigrants. Well, illegal immigrants don't have a say. Sorry, you don't. In fact, you should be in jail. You're criminals. But Davis wouldn't even call them illegal. She called them undocumented. They're documented. They have birth certificates. They say born in Mexico, or born in El Salvador, or born in Colombia, or born in Saudi Arabia, or born in Iraq, or born in Syria, or Somalia. They have documents. They're just not documents that say they're U.S. citizens, because they're not! They don't have visas to legally come here, because they're criminals that jump the border. So they're documented. Don't tell me they're not documented. Such a improper term. But speaking of that, just want to remind everybody. Oh, I don't have that queued up. Never mind. I was going to talk about the what Cruz is trying to do with Obama's amnesty. You guys have heard that all last week. Anyway, let's get off of this. And since we're already talking about kind of the left-wing mentality and how people try to spin Davis's complete and utter loss in the debate as somehow a factual win, despite the fact that she presented zero facts relevant to the actual debate questions. Other things going on with the loony left. Well, over the weekend, they had a global warming or climate change, or whatever the current made-up term is for weather. But the alarmists and activists and nanny state people all got together for a rally on climate change and global warming, to include like Code Pink, etc. Now, a bunch of them were there, showing solidarity, but they actually were there to push their own little agendas that had nothing to do with weather or climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it. But these people are all supposedly hyper-environmentalists. If you looked at the areas where the rally took place, they're mountains of litter. And some of it was recyclable, some of it not so much, but it was mounds and mounds of litter. They left behind oodles and oodles of trash and garbage instead of recycling, which of course would be more green, right? You compare that to most Tea Party rallies where afterwards, you finish giving the speeches, everything, people go around, if they didn't pick up after themselves, and they're picking up the few lazy pigs that didn't. They usually leave a place better than when they arrived, or do their attempts to. So there you go. There you have it, folks. Those loony left. Don't litter! Go green! Stop global warming! I'm just going to leave my Starbucks crap all over the place here, as well as my styrofoam cups, because I can't have a red Solo cup, because that's now copyrighted by the new Miss America who used to work at Planned Parenthood and kill babies. So there you have it. Other loony left wingers, we have, if you haven't heard about this yet, we've got Mary Burke. Mary Burke is running for governor of, I think it's Wisconsin, or is it Michigan? Scott Walker. That's Michigan. That's Wisconsin. So she's running against Scott Walker to be governor of Wisconsin, and she's Democratic Party candidate, and she has this great economic plan to help out the state and get her state back on its feet, like it hasn't done better already, with as far as Scott Walker has been able to do things. Brought it, he's started to reverse the trend that was started by the oligarchs on the left, and start putting things back towards a free market normal. But she has this plan, and when you look at her plan, what she did was she copied and pasted from a whole bunch of other really, really bad economic plans that have been done by Democrats in the past that have all failed. So her economic plan is a plan built and predicated on failure